I'm delighted to welcome you to this, what I hope is going to be a fascinating conversation about romance fraud. I'm based here in Vienna today, but I'm joined online by Kirsty and Anna, who I wonder be very kindly introduce themselves. Anna, should we go with you first?
Okay, hi everyone. My name's Anna Rowe, and I was a victim of a different kind of romance fraud back in 2015 to late 2016. From my experience, I founded Catch the Catfish, as that was a very well-known term at the time, and it was bringing lots and lots of victims in to help. And then more recently, over the last 3 years, I co-founded LoveZ with Cecilia Filhoy from The Tinder Swindler, and we are a fraud centre and think tank around all things dedicated to romance fraud.
Thank you very much, Anna. Kirsty, over to you.
Hi, I'm Kirsty Guest. I am a victim of a romance fraud, which started in the June of 2023, and by the December, obviously that had finished. I am an advocate now for forcing change in this section, all fraud to be fair, but obviously romance fraud being very much on my radar, and hopefully bringing everybody to work as one, because I feel that that's very, very important, that we all speak and understand how we go from here to change it and protect people like me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Kirsty and Anna, for your introductions. So I'm going to get stuck right in. I've got a set of questions that I'm really keen to ask you. And again, we'll allow some time later on for people here in the audience here in Vienna, but also people online to ask questions as well. The first question really is actually two parts. So I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on what safety measures do you think that are currently working well? And on the other side of that, what isn't working particularly effectively? So as users of apps, I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on this. Anna, can I start with yourself first?
Yep. Having been working in this field for sort of 8 to 10 years now, I have seen some quite drastic changes over periods of time, including where we've had a shift from dating apps being the most prevalent platforms used by scammers to that shift going over onto social media and other things like gaming apps, etc. So there's been a definite shift. And I've also, in the more recent couple of years, seen a really big shift in the way the ODDA is actually implementing things with their members. And finally, we're seeing the results of that starting to come through on the actual platforms. So I know that when I very first talked to the ODDA, I think a couple of people before you, Simon, there just wasn't a whole lot going on. And I know that there were some brilliant companies like Scamalytics that you have working with you that were doing things, but it really wasn't having an impact on the platforms. Whereas the collaboration that's going on between your members now, with the sharing of data, I know that's been over the last year that things have been going on, safety measures that are now taking down more of those nefarious profiles are really starting to be impactful. And I'm seeing that from the outside, remember. So that's, I think, for users, it's those safety measures that are important, is that we can see it from the outside. As always, there's a little bit more to be done. But I know that I could go on particular dating platforms and within 10 minutes, I could collect around 20 fake profiles just from looking at them. Because you do become, after a while, you become very, it becomes easy to spot them. I can now go on particular dating platforms and not find any in 10 minutes, and it's more of a struggle.
Brilliant.
What about you, Kirsty?
Very good. Kirsty, yes, same question.
Well, I agree with Anna strongly on this. I was recently on a dating site and found three potential scammers. After reading through their profiles, looking at their pictures, it was quite clear to see that they had moved from one platform to another, and there they were. And that really infuriated me, seeing as I've been such a victim of this romance fraud. And obviously, when I was going through my romance fraud, the protection in place, it wasn't there. So there is a massive difference from then to now. I do believe it is very helpful. I believe the pop-ups are really good. It stops people in their tracks. But I think there is a lot more work to be done. And I also believe that if we could just try and get people to stay on these platforms longer instead of moving on to WhatsApp, like what happened to me, even though mine wasn't very quick, mine was more of a slow romance fraud. So there wasn't that urgency that you see and that people are now aware of. It was slightly different. But I think that if we can really push to keeping them on the platform more so, and keeping that platform quick in response so that they don't feel they need to move on to WhatsApp to get the pictures or to move on to have the quick conversations that they want instead of waiting for the app. But I think as we've moved forward with what we're doing and working together, I think we really have made a big difference so far, but there's still a lot more to be done, in my opinion.
Brilliant. Thank you both. And I think it's perhaps a really good opportunity to hear a bit more about your own stories, because, you're here today as survivors of romance scam. And, one of the reasons for putting this panel together was to really make sure that platforms, not just in the dating sector, but elsewhere, can really learn those lessons. And Kirsty, perhaps start with yourself, really. Just if you'd be happy to just explain what happened to you. And I think our sort of good crowd we've got in the audience here, we're very interested in hearing more.
Absolutely. Well, it was a very long story, so I'll try and make it, reasonably short, but with all the impact. So yes, I came out of an abusive marriage after 16 years, and I took my time and started speaking to friends and family who decided for me in a way that it was time for me to find somebody to be with and to be happy and find love. We all want love, don't we? We all want to be happy. And I wasn't used to the technology side of things. This was all new to me. I'd never even ventured into it, didn't know nothing about online dating. I was a newbie. And after a lot of convincing, I decided to give it a go. I built the profile with the help of my sister. She'd found love online. She's still with him now, 11 years later. And I built the profile, which I found quite difficult to sort of explain who I was in a very brief window. But I did it. And I ventured out there and I said, here I am. And many messages came through. And I realised that this was a quick thing and it worked quite quickly. And if people liked you, they wanted to talk to you. But I also found it slightly intrusive as well, something that I wasn't used to, having people's photos and conversations in your own home, in your own space. But I did stick with it. And it was a while. It was a good week, nearly 2 weeks before I had the hello that actually changed my life. I really didn't know that 5 letters would change my life beyond compare, but they did. And I started talking to this very handsome gentleman. His pictures looked real. I didn't think anything of it. He was kind. He was considerate. He was well-spoken. He was well-written. He said that he lived in Leeds, which is, I'm a Yorkshire girl. So if you're not sure where that is, it's up north in England. And yeah, he made me feel safe. He knew places that I knew. He made me feel comfortable. He'd talk about street names, restaurants, shops, all again, not showing me the red flags that I see now, because I didn't see any then. I wasn't aware of these red flags. And we talked and we really did start to build a rapport. And, I really thought that I really thought we had something, I thought we could really build on this. And it went on, and we were talking. There was no hurry to move off the app, off the platform onto WhatsApp, not straight away at all. He was just very, very kind, wanting to get to know me, obviously said beautiful things about me and said I was funny, all the lovely things, pulling me in, I guess now in hindsight, pulling me in. And it wasn't until a good 3 weeks before he even said, let's move on to WhatsApp. We then did that and we were talking, and every day he'd ring up and he'd say, how is your day? How are you today? What are you doing today? How are the children? There were, I felt he really wanted to be a part of my life as it was on a day-to-day basis. He told me he was a businessman. He travelled a lot with work. He did go down to London a lot, and he was based in Leeds, but travelled between the two and around the world. And I never really thought anything of it because, to be fair, it's not my place to pry. And I just liked him for who he was and was hoping that we'd build on this connection. After a few more weeks, he then said that he was going to Istanbul on business. And because he said he was a businessman, it didn't change my outlook. I didn't see it. There was no red flag yet again. It was just he was going on business and I was busy, and I thought, right, okay. And we'd arranged to meet when he got back. So I was really looking forward to that. And we spoke all the way up to him getting on the plane, pretty much. And he sent pictures, and I was quite comfortable and confident that we'd meet when he came back. And then he got off in Istanbul. He showed me the airport, more pictures, went to his hotel, pictures of the hotel. And again, talking until it came to the day where he said he had to go out and do his business deal. And kind of, I hadn't realised that I'd kind of started to fall for him by this point. It was only when he left the country that I had this feeling, and I had this feeling of, do you know what? I think I might be falling here. I think I might be falling for this man. And he said that morning he was dressed in a suit and he looked very smart. And he said, right, I'm going off to do business now. And I said, well, I wish you best of luck. And he said, well, the sooner I get it done, the sooner I come home and the sooner we can be together. And I left it at that. And I said goodbye. And then I never heard from him for 3 days, nearly 4 days. And by this point, I drove myself insane because I thought, oh, I've blown this. He really doesn't like me, and I've gone and fallen, and he's not interested, and he's just left me, and that's all there is to it. And I worked myself up because I couldn't get in touch with him, and he wouldn't speak to me. He wouldn't answer the phone. So then it came to the end of that then, and all of a sudden I got a phone call in the middle of the night saying that he'd been involved in an accident and he'd been pulled out of a taxi, and he had all his credentials taken, passport, etc., and his credit cards, etc. And I was mortified, and I couldn't believe that somebody would do something like that to a person. And I wanted to help him, but there was nothing I could do at the time. There was nothing I could do. He sent me a picture of him in hospital. The picture was real. And he didn't look very well, I'm not going to lie. And my heart sank, and I wanted to help. He said that he would be in hospital for a while and that he'd stay in touch, and he did. And we kept talking, and it wasn't even at that point that he asked for my help in that way. He kind of waited and waited. And then he said to me, I'm struggling with connection, Kirsty. This was after a few days, maybe a week nearly in hospital. And he was struggling with connection, and he said, could I do him a favour? Could I help him? And I said, well, how am I supposed to help you? And he said, well, I need to get into my online banking, and I can't do that. So if I give you my details, would you go on? I'm giving you the permission. It's safe to do so. Would you go on and move me some money for this business deal? Because if I don't complete this deal, not only am I in hospital and lost all my credit cards and etc., I'm going to lose the deal. So at that point then I thought, well, look, if I was in that situation, I'd need somebody to help me, and I'd hope that somebody would help me. But it wasn't an easy decision, and I had to sleep on it because I'm thinking, I don't know if this is even legal. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. And my mind was just going crazy, and I was playing over it and over it and over it. I didn't sleep. He rang me the next day and he said, are you going to help me? And I said, yes, I will help you. He gave me his details, sent me straight to the international bank. I looked at the screen and it all looked very professional. I mean, I'm not an international banker, but it looked very, very good, and it looked real to me. To me, it looked real. So I put in the details and it let me in, and I looked at the accounts, and there was you could move money, you could exchange money, you could have mortgages, you could have credit cards, you could have loans, currency change, all that was there. There'd been payments that had gone in, payments that had gone out, completed payments, pending payments, all, some of them small value, some of them high value. And then I looked at his account balance and it was 650,000 euros. And I went, wow. And I was shocked because I thought, what does he see in somebody like me? But I still didn't think anything of it. I just thought, well, that's unbelievable, you know, unbelievable. So I did have a little nosy around on the account because I wanted to be sure. And I felt secure in what I've seen. So he said to me, he was on the phone at the time, and he said, right, I'd like you to move 85,000 euros, please, but I'd like you to do it in 2 separate payments. So he gave me the details, I put them in, and I did 2 separate transactions. The first one left, no problem. The balance changed, everything looked fine. And he said, fantastic, brilliant. Can you do the next one? And I did the next one. And again, the money went, the balance changed, the payment was complete. And he was over the moon, and I felt like I'd done a really good thing. And I thought, if there's one thing I can do here is help him in this way. So I've done something really good. And he was so thankful and loving and just really, really kind towards me at that point. And he left then, and we went to bed. I went to bed, and I thought nothing of it because I thought, well, I've done it now. And then a couple of days later, he rang up and he said, look, I'm going to be getting out of hospital soon, but I need you to do me a favour again. And I said, what's the favour? And he said, can you go back on to my online banking because I need to move some money so I can pay my hospital bill. And because I'd already done it once, I wasn't as fearful this time around. I thought, well, you know, everything seemed to go well. He was happy. It's not really bothered me. So, yeah, of course, I'll help. And he gave me the details again because I'd burnt them because I don't like to keep things like that. And I went to put in the details and it blocked me out. It said change in IP of address and account blocked. And I looked at the screen and I thought, oh, my God, this is my fault. I've locked him out for his account. And I was on the phone and I'm talking to him and he's going, what do you mean it's blocked? And I said, well, the account's blocked and I've put the details. He said, try it again. And I tried it again. And by this point, he was getting quite upset and raising his voice and he was quite agitated, which is understandable because I'd blocked him out of his account. Or so I thought. And yeah, he then escalated that into quite a little more anger and made it quite clear that it was my fault and that I put him in another situation and he couldn't speak to me right now. In fact, he was disgusted and he put the phone down. So days went by and I just never heard a thing. And I was really, really upset because I thought, this is my fault. I don't know I don't know how this has happened, but I feel that I'm to blame. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I got a phone call. And he said to me, Kirsty, I need your help. You've put me in this situation and I need you to help me again. And I said, I don't know how I can possibly help you. How could I possibly help you? And he said, look, you know I'm good for the money. Would you possibly send over some money for my hospital fee? Now, I am not a rich woman. I'm a single parent. I have 4 young children. And I sat in my bedroom with my heart in my mouth because I thought this is like the biggest decision I think I'm ever going to have to make because I don't know if I'm ever going to get this back. So there was that moment where I thought, you know, am I going to get this back? But then he kept reassuring me, look, I'm going to pay you back. It's not a problem. You can have double. I said, I don't want double. If I do this, I just want what you owe me. That's not a problem. I just want to be fair and square and that's fine and get you out of there so you can come home. And I thought about it until the next day. And then I decided that I needed to do this because it was my fault. So I'd already convinced myself that it was my fault. And he rang up and he gave me the details and I transferred the first amount of money, which was 6,500. that money went. He was over the moon. He'd gone back to his loving self. He made me feel like I'd done a really good thing, and that he'd be coming home, and then we'd meet and we'd carry on this chapter in our lives. But that kind of wasn't to be. So after that, then he then said that he needed money for his hotel bill once he'd been released from hospital. He'd got to the hotel and the bill needed paying, and because his account was blocked, I needed to help him again. And this is how it started. And it went on from 6,500 to 5,000, 4,000, 10,000, 12,000. In 1 month, I gave £35,000 to one payee, one money mule, which I know of now. They just in 1 month, and my bank never ever stopped any transaction. Every transaction, no pop-ups, no interference from them whatsoever. Every payment went through, and it got to a point where this went on from the summer through to the December. I stopped eating. I started drinking. I couldn't get him home, and every time he asked me for more money, I knew I'd already given this money away. So in my heart of hearts, in my head's going, right, Kirsty, if you don't give this money now, you've lost everything. You've lost all that money now, because you can't help him get to where he needs to be to get that money, to give you your money back. So you're on this hamster wheel constantly, and I couldn't get off it. And there was a part of me that didn't want to get off it, because I knew that I'd lose him and I'd also lose my money. So obviously that all went on through the summer. I dropped down to 6 stone. I was not talking to anyone. He said this was always between me and him. Nobody else would understand. And I shut myself away from everybody, just had enough energy to deal with my children. I felt like a recluse. Really, really bad, awful times for me there. And then we got through that bit and I'd started to run out of money. So I didn't have an endless pot of money. By the end of it, there was the best part of £90,000 that I gave over. And it got to that point, and my sister stepped in. She'd taken a picture of the man that I was supposedly having this relationship with. I didn't realise she'd taken this picture, but she took it right back at the beginning when I showed him his profile, and she took a picture. And because we're a very close family, and I just dropped off the face of the earth, and when anyone saw me, I couldn't look them in the eye. I went to ground. My sister started digging. I'd already done reverse search and Google Tin Eye and all that. I'd done it, and it came back with nothing. So again, there was no red flag there. So my sister had done some digging, and we're now into the December. He's still talking to me. He's pushing me constantly. I need more money. I need more money. I need to get you your money back. Why don't we, I'm going to get the account back open. He then said that he'd flown over there with the money that I'd given him to try and open his account, said that it was open. I went to the account, I put in the details again, and I got into the account, and he said, transfer yourself 93,000 euros or thereabouts, 98,000 euros. And I did it, and it just remained pending. And then I went back in, and it blocked me back out. And then he said I blocked his account again, and it went on this vicious circle. It was just constant, Anyway, in the background, my sister's doing her detective work. She said it was very difficult. She went through Facebook, she went through Instagram, she went through all social media she could find with this photo, and she couldn't find anything until she came across somebody else's Instagram account, and his face was in one of their pictures. And she then followed that picture, and she found this man's Instagram account. She rang me up and she said, Kirsty, I need to see you. And will you come to Mum and Dad's? I need to see you. Will you pick me up? So I got in the car reluctantly, because I didn't want to see anyone. And once she got me in the car, she just turned to me and she just said, Kirsty. And I said, yeah. And she went, I found him. And I said, what do you mean I've found him? You found him? And she says, I found him. I said, you haven't found him because I know exactly where he is. And I became very defensive and very emotional. I was very angry, really, really angry with my sister because she was telling me something I didn't want to hear. And she just turned around and she said, look, you're getting very upset. I've sent a link to your phone. I want you to go home and I want you to go and look at it. And when I got home, it took a lot of courage. I sat on the sofa, the Christmas tree lights were on, and I looked at my phone and I was so frightened about what I was going to see, but I didn't know what I was going to see, but I just had this fear. And I pressed the button and I pressed on the link and this guy's Instagram came up and he had a life. So he was a real person. But my scammer had been using his photos, his life to tell his story to get my money. And every picture he'd sent me was on this gentleman's Instagram account. He had a wife and a beautiful daughter. He had a lovely life. He was a semi-professional footballer from London. And I punished myself, sat there, and I went through every photo because I still could not believe it was real. I was in love with this man and I had built this idea of a life that we were going to have together. And it wasn't until I found most of the pictures, there was one left, and I went through and it was the hospital picture. And when I found that, my whole world imploded. I became so withdrawn. I had to tell my parents, and the silence was deafening in the room when I told my parents. And my dad just turned to me and he just said, Kirsty, you are my daughter. And if you want to brush this under the carpet, then that's what we'll do. But if you don't want to brush this under the carpet and you want to go to the police, then we support you 100%. And I came home and I nearly took my own life after that because I couldn't deal with the situation as it was. I felt so much shame, embarrassment, misunderstanding, hurt, and loss. I couldn't even put it into words, and I still can't. I can't even find the words that can explain how I felt. And after that moment, I realised that I had to do something for me because it was dragging me down. I was going down a black hole fast. I was hanging on by my fingernails and I couldn't do it anymore. So I went to the police. And I walked up to the police station in the snow and I went to the desk and she said, how can I help you? And I said, I'm here to report a crime. And she said, well, you could have rung us. And I said, well, I can't ring on this one. She said, well, what's the crime? I said, well, I feel I've been a victim of a romance fraud. And she just said, well, you could have rung us. And she pushed a piece of paper under the desk with a pen and she said, can you write down what's happened to you? And I said, unfortunately, that's why I'm here, because it's not something you can say over the phone and I can't really write it down, but I really need to speak to somebody now or I will never come back. I'll turn around and I won't come back. And I was in that police station for nearly 7 hours. Wow. But the lady that took me into the room, she sat and just started writing and I started talking, and she'd been quite offhand with me before I'd even got into that room because she said everybody was busy. So they were too busy for my story, too busy for me to talk to them. And I sat in that room and started speaking, and after about 20 minutes she just closed a book and she said, no, this is bigger than me and I need to get international fraud on the case. And yeah, I was in there for 7 hours. But I know I'm wondering about time, so I'm going to try and shut it down for you. But but what I will say is this: although I'd reported it to police, the help that you get after, Anna's fabulous. She's brilliant. She's made such a movement on that front, and she should be very proud of herself. I felt it so lonely. There wasn't enough help for me, and this sort of fraud, it takes you down and you can't come back from it. It takes years. It breaks you as a person. It breaks your finances. You are still having to pay your mortgages, your cars, your credit cards. It's all still there to pay. And there's no one there to talk to unless you're talking to Anna, of course. But there's no one there. it's a very dark place, and it took my sister every day calling me to step out of bed, open the curtains, go downstairs and put the kettle on and start your day, because I couldn't start my day because I felt like my life was over. I've cut it down for you. I hope that's helpful.
Kirsty, I cannot imagine how difficult that must have been, both to go through, but also thank you once again for sharing your story with everyone here. I mean, incredible. And, I'm, hopefully people will take a lot away from that. Anna, something, lots of nodding when Kirsty was talking there. I just want to perhaps focus a little bit around the victim side, which Kirsty sort of finished off there. And there seems to be this culture of victim blaming, which seems manifestly unfair. The new fraud strategies published by the UK government last week talked about better support for victims, which is great. We've heard a lot about it at the conference this week. But I'm just interested to hear your thoughts about how do we move away from victim blaming? And that's also aimed at platforms as well. So what can we do?
So for me, it's got to be about educating not just victims or potential victims, but society as a whole, so that they don't stigmatise victims when this does happen, but of course all wider stakeholders, which is what we've started to do at Love Said. The police are often first responders, or banks are often first responders, and at the moment there is not enough education. There's nothing to do with fraud in like romance fraud in the College of Policing curriculum, and officers don't get any education, so it's an absolute postcode lottery for victims when they go in. And it's the same with banks. I mean, why would cashiers who are that sort of, if someone does go into a bank on that face-to-face, why would they particularly know how to engage with victims to get the best outcomes and to stop the trauma that continues after the fraud? And believe me, the majority of victims find that the trauma after the fraud is, if not paralleled, worse, because you're not only living with that shame and everything that needs to that's occurring and you're processing at the time, and then you get this onslaught of other awfulness that's going on. And I think education is key, better understanding about what it's like for a victim of romance fraud to go through what they've been through, so that people process it differently and don't just see what is published in a newspaper, for example, which is a shortened, cut down version of something that has gone on for months or years, because you can never explain in detail that in a newspaper article. So all people see is woman met someone online and within 3 weeks sent them their life savings, and that's all people see about romance fraud. They do not understand this. I'm calling it, and just about to launch very shortly, I know I've been talking with yourselves and Ashley about creating an umbrella term, which will be romance abuse, which encompasses not just the psychological manipulation that takes place, but what that triggers in our bodies with the neurochemistry that goes on, which is paralleled to domestic abuse. So we have got now academic research that shows the parallels between the behaviours of abusers in DV relationships and how that is translated into the scripts by psychologists for online criminals. There is no difference. And I got really emotional again listening to your story there, because even though mine was someone here in the UK, a lawyer, and the intent wasn't financial, everything you were saying, I felt it, because it's only when we talk to each other that we actually get that feeling that Kirsty was talking about, because we've been through that manipulation process and we feel it in our bodies. And it is the most intense feeling that gets created through this psychological manipulation and the neurochemistry that goes on in our bodies. I think when people start to get that embedded on a holistic way, whether it's society or all the organisations that are around victims, we might start to get some leeway with the stigma.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anna. That was really helpful. I'd like to come back to the framework a little bit later on if we've got time, just to learn a bit more about that. But something you said that was really interesting there, the summit so far has talked a lot about very large scale fraudsters, so scam centers in Southeast Asia and East Africa, for example. But that's not the case in yours, Anna, and Kirsty, I've seen with yours as well. You're actually talking about individuals.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between the two in terms of how they operate and the tactics that they use?
I think Kirsty's was still the huge organised crime from over in West Africa, but she had a really experienced one. And there's a hierarchy of scammers over in West Africa. We've got newbies there as well. And then we've got sort of a middle tier of scammers where we've got mentors that are recruiting into what's known as Hustlers Kingdom. And then we've got huge organised crime gangs that are often using victims to launder money as well. But Kirsty's, and I've only seen a couple in my time where they don't follow the norms of getting people off those platforms quickly. The majority will, and it just shows the experience with that one. He wasn't going to follow the norms in that respect. But we are seeing more and more where these are individuals, they are career criminals that are doing this, either for money or for mine, where there was a sexual intent behind mine. He was an individual that was using dating apps to target women for his own self-gratification. And there's a huge amount, 17 victims in with the one guy with mine. And I think for dating apps, that's where we have got this disparity in how they can deal with those particular profiles. Because although Kirsty's type will, to most circumstances, have signals on those profiles that can be identified quite easily, and within the messages where they would normally, you'd see that chat going on, let's move to WhatsApp. So there's lots of things to pick up on, including the IP addresses being in different places. And I could see that there's Nick from Scamalytics here, and that's something that they pull on, and sharing those phone numbers and emails and things that are from hotspots, if we like. You've got the ones like mine that's here in the UK and is an individual, and they're the ones that are much harder to spot. But there are still things that people can do, and that's where your reporting tools are going to come in really handy, and getting different reporting things in place so that even when it is an in-person one, the victim can go back when they're not on that platform anymore, trying to, I think for me, in these instances, they need to be able to alert the dating platform that profile offline has been nefarious. There's been something wrong with it. There's been, a nefarious intent behind that profile, so that perhaps those dating profiles can then contact others that had been in contact with it. For me, that's where that side of it needs to be, which is different to Kirsty's type.
Brilliant. Well, perhaps a question to Kirsty just on the back of that. And we talk a lot about trust, and something the ODDA is trying to do with its members is to develop standards that are seen as a benchmark across industry, and that's about keeping people safe online. I'm just interested, what do you think that platforms should be doing to make them safer for their users? What are the things that they can, practical takeaways?
Well, I'm quite a strong one on this. I do believe that ID is really important here, because these people are posing on different profiles from Insta, Facebook, wherever they find it. Magazines, I've seen them with magazine pictures, and yet they're talking to people. Okay, so it's like what Anna said. It's once you hit that emotional level, you see past the picture, you see past the red flags, because you're at that emotional stage. So we need to stop it before it gets to that level, because once we go below that, it's over. You can't break the chain. You can't break the spell. It's done. So I'm thinking personally, I think ID is really important. So if these people are wanting to sign up, I think, why are we not doing ID? Why are we not checking their credentials? Why are we not checking their face and picture on their ID, and that their profiles are the same? That is going to protect people. I also think that, like I've said before, making the platforms faster when you're sending messages, and smoother. I feel that a lot of people get very irritated with the fact that they can't send a message like WhatsApp and it's not instant. They can't carry that conversation on. They're getting really into somebody, and they're thinking, oh, I really like this guy, and they can't do it quick enough. So then they move to WhatsApp because it's instant. They can send pictures, they can send video, they can do that. So I think that that's something that needs to be dealt with, really, to keep your customer base on your platform. I also think that obviously these people are paying for the privilege to be on this platform. So I do believe that they need to be protected. And I don't believe that the protection is enough at this moment in time. If there was ID in place and maybe a bit of a vetting system, if you like, beforehand to check that these people are who they say they are, I think that's really important because, you know, you're asking people to pay a certain amount per month. They have the right to feel protected on that platform. So if we need to put in an insurance for that, so that in case they do get scammed through your platform, then that insurance is there for them, because you can't start life after the lie again. So we need to put it in place now to stop it getting to that emotional level before it's too late. Yeah, I can be quite passionate about it. Sorry.
Understandably so, Kirsty. We've got 10 minutes left, and I would like to open the floor to questions in a moment. But Anna, I just, same question to you really about what do you think needs to be done? What are the things that we can take away? And it could be any platform, not just those that are dealing with dating or social discovery.
Yeah.
This is your chance to kind of put your points across here.
I have seen a huge change with the things that are being put in place, but the one thing that I don't think is being done enough, especially for Kirsty's type of fraud, is they're not utilising AI enough to recognise faces on the platforms. So back in the day, like Kirsty was saying, and it was the first thing that I learned to do to help people was doing those reverse searches, but Google, Bing, Yandex, Tineye, and they're all virtually pointless at this point in time. Only recognise an image. But we know the last couple of years that we've got things like Face Check ID, Clarity ID, PIM eyes that are utilising AI to get biometrics on a face, and then they are there's a hierarchy of how many matched markers there are to find that face across all of the different platforms. So why are platforms, not just dating, we're talking right across the thing, why is that not something automatic that's being utilized when that photograph is uploaded to see, actually we've got 50 profiles using that face across our platform, let's do a check and see who they belong to, or whichever. So that's the bit for me and for users, because like I said, from the outside they can't see what's going on underneath, they can only see what's appearing on the platforms, and that's the bit for us that's going to build trust the most if we stop seeing those familiar faces.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a panel this morning, Yoel Roth, Senior Vice President for Match Group, was talking about some of the huge successes they've had with a really new tool using AI to sort of live face match. So this is starting to happen and see more of. Brilliant. Yeah. We've got about 8 minutes left. I'm very keen if anyone here in Vienna is keen to ask a question of our two panelists. Anything at all that you would like to ask them, either about their experience or their thoughts in terms of what other platforms can do to improve safety for all users. If not, I've got a few more questions to ask you, but anyone here want to ask a question? Yes, if you could introduce yourself as well, sir, and that's it, just press the button there. Hopefully you can hear this clearly, Anna and Kirsty. We'll give it a go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
I can, yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi,
Hello.
Kirsty. Hi, Anna. I'm Michael Davidson. I'm from the UK Foreign Office.
Okay.
And I work here in Vienna at the UN. And I guess the question is because, first of all, thanks for your stories because they're really valuable to hear. And I'm sorry that that happened to you. It sounds awful. And I think if you looked in the room, we were all kind of feeling it with you. So it's really appreciated. I guess the question is, we work at the UN, and it's very difficult at the UN to get the voices of victims. What can we do more to try and help you, to bring you to these events, to have people hear your stories? Because I think the only way that we can work together is understanding that there is a problem, and I guess to internationalize that that understanding. So how can we make you more welcome at places like the UN?
We're always open to come and talk, aren't we?
Absolutely. You've just got to send us an email, pick up the phone. I'm going to make this my life mission to create change, because like I've said before, and I'm going to say it again, you cannot come back from this. It takes pieces of you away that I will never have again. I've lost them forever. I have allowed somebody to take that from me. I've allowed the banks to take a little piece of that from me. I've allowed people in public to say, how could you fall for such a thing? You don't fall for such a thing. The language needs to change, the barriers need to come down, and we need to give people the chance to speak, and they need to have a voice. And if they can't speak, then I will speak for them. So just tell me where you want me, and I'll be there, and I will make sure, and I'm sure Anna will too, that we can spread our voice loud and clear for all to hear.
Yeah, and it's 100% right, and it's what's motivated me to keep going over the last 8 years as well. It was other victims saying thank you for being our voice, because we haven't got the strength to do that.
Yeah.
And it's not all victims that can, it's not part of their journey, but when we do want to do it, we will do it. And romance fraud is such a huge spectrum, much bigger than anyone realizes. It's much more than just what happened to me and what happened to Kirsty. There's a whole host of stuff in between, and the platforms are utilised to enable that, unfortunately, and the banks facilitate it in the financial cases. So, you know, we're always happy to. It's important that we recognise that and get everybody there. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Just to add on, sorry, can I just add this on?
Of course you can.
Just said, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are. It doesn't matter where you come from, your back history, anything. This affects all walks of life, right across the spectrum. And I think it's really important that we get that across, and we have to spread that word.
Brilliant. Thank you. And again, the OGDA is working with both of you, and we also are convening survivors groups as well to understand more about informing what platforms can do to hopefully keep people safer online. We've got probably time for one more question. Has anyone got a question they would... Yes, sir, if you'd like to, again, just introduce yourself, and that's it. Perfect. Go away.
Thank you very much. I'm Diego from Mexico, also posted here in Vienna, actually Michael's colleague. And thank you very much for the event and the presentations. And Kirsty, we praise your courage and your valor. If I understood correctly, and my apologies if not, you seem to mention or to imply that there were red flags that you could have identified at the time, and others that you could identify now that you have educated through your own experience with a more analytical view. If that, my understanding is correctly, could you offer some of those red flags that should have been obvious? Because in your presentation, you did something that I was thinking, what I could have done, for example, Google the person, as you tried.
Yeah,
but But there were these red flags which should have been obvious that you didn't look, and vis-a-vis the others that require a more trained person to identify, and perhaps in order to share that with the people as kind of the first barriers or defenses. Or thank you.
Well, I do think, so obviously at the time I couldn't see these red flags. I was emotionally blocked to them. All I could see was the situation I was in, the deterioration of the situation I was in, and the fact that I'd lost all this money, and that at the end of this phone was this person that I was in love with. And it's only when you step away from that, you know, when the chain was broken for me, like I said, that everything just imploded. I had no understanding of what was going on, where I was, what I was to do next. How do I get out of this? How do I move forward? How do I breathe every day? That's where I was at. I was quite happy to end everything because I didn't know how to deal with that situation and control it. So as I've now come away from that since 2023, it's taken me this long to be able to speak to a room like this or a conference. I still need to have my hand held, but what I do know is I can see the red flags now, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. So yes, we need to be clear about these red flags, and They're not all the same. It's not all urgency. It's not all grammar. It's not, there's the little things. And I would like to put my red flags down so that they can add to Anna's red flags, so that we can create this, so that people can look at it and see and think about it. But what you need to understand is, when you're in the thick of this, it doesn't matter what anyone says. If my sister hadn't got me in that car, I would have kept giving what I didn't have to give, because I was just part of it. It was within me. It was my fabric. Okay. So to stop that, we have to put the feelers out now. We have to put the red flags out now. We have to make sure that people understand now before it hits the emotional level, because it doesn't matter how many red flags you think you see, you don't see them when it hits that point. Hopefully Anna will agree with me. Yeah. I'm sure she's got, yeah.
Brilliant. I'm afraid we're going to have to come to an end. We've reached our allotted time, and I know we could talk for many more hours on such an important subject. But I'd just like to say a massive thank you to everyone who's joined us today here in Vienna at the UN, and also everyone as well who's joined us online. An incredibly powerful story from Kirsty and Anna, and I think lots of lessons to be taken away that hopefully we can use to make platforms even safer in the future. So thank you once again for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you.